Hey guys, I'm back with another deck guide using Caitlyn from the new Bandle City expansion. So the core concept of this deck is that Teemo, Caitlyn, and most importantly, Puffcat Paddler all make traps and put them into the opponent's deck, where your hexcore or insider knowledge draws traps when they are drawing cards. You do that for a few turns in the mid game, and then hopefully you finish with leveled Caitlyn, traps, or Karina. So the basic play pattern is to drop all your value engines on turn 3, and which engine you drop first depends on whether you have the attack token or not. So if you do have the token, you play Caitlyn and attack. If you don't, you either play Foundry or Peddler, and if you have neither of them and you have banked 3 spell mana on turn 3, you can play Insider Knowledge, and if you have none of those cards, then you just try to develop a board and survive until you draw your engines and play them safely. Of course, you play Teemo whenever you can and try to attack with him as early as possible. Usually, people spend a lot of mana to remove this 1 mana card, and it doesn't even feel that bad. It's only bad if they actually trade even with mana using either Thermal Beam or Go Hard. If you have 2 to 3 Peddlers on board, it's actually quite easy to just fill the opponent's deck with shrooms without even Teemo. I suggest you save your pranks. Don't use your pranks too early. Wait till you have at least a Peddler on board before you prank or trinket trade. And when you trinket trade, if your spell isn't cheap enough or it isn't just another insider's knowledge, you should probably just make an Autopus and play the second prank. Autopus is a pretty good blocker, especially against aggro matchups. So with this deck, you actually want to keep track of how many cards the opponent has and how many traps they have, because it will give you a pretty good estimation on how many traps they are likely to draw. In fact, even if you force draw them and without planting any traps in their deck, you are actually increasing the odds of them drawing future planted traps. So when your opponent does some early draws, you shouldn't feel so bad. Other than that, I'll give you some card nuances you should know. Caitlyn, level 1 and level 2, procs her passive effect when blocking as well. So when she strikes defensively, she can actually plant more flash bombs or damage the enemy nexus, which is funny how you can kill with a strike while defending. Of course, it's countered by quick attack since she can't strike back if she has less health than the attack. Another card that's pretty interesting is the Lecturing Yordle. Lecturing Yordle, despite being a 4 mana card, you should have 1 or 2 spell mana banked for the poison darts. So you need to keep your mana in mind so that you don't burn away the poison darts by playing him on curve too hard. Another interaction is Karina. The wording on Karina is kind of weird, but I like to clarify that when it's activating the effects of all traps in the top 5 cards, it's actually just activating the effect, but it doesn't use up the trap. So once you use it, it's not like the opponent will have 5 cards that they can draw without traps. Also, some tips. In general, matchups are quite interesting with this deck, where if you're into control decks, you can try to play an aggro playstyle where you attack with all your units and you actually actively try to draw such that your opponent, who's playing the control deck with more expensive spells and cards they can't use, you can easily burn their cards by overdrawing them. And a useful tip is that the maximum number of cards in a hand is 10, and whenever you play Insider Knowledge, it's basically a net 1 card, but then the enemy nets 2 cards. And by playing it early, you might actually force them to play cheaper cards they don't really want to waste, or you can overdraw cards and make it such that they don't actually draw the cards they're drawing. It's actually getting burnt, and sometimes you could even burn champions. When you play an aggro style against control decks, you should consider using your damaging spells on their nexus instead of units, because the more you slow down the game, the harder it's actually for you to win against these decks. So by using your poison darts, your mystic shots, and your get exciteds on the opponent's face, it's actually much easier for you to win. If you notice that you've mystic shot the unit, you can try to pay attention to the end of the game, whether or not you're just a bit off lethal and it's because you invested the mystic shots or the poison darts to kill some otherwise not very threatening units. Early mulligans, you want to mulligan for, of course, your 3 mana engines, and you want to keep Teemo. If you already have your engines, you can choose to mulligan away the cards that don't really synergize with them. Really slow cards like Karina, and you can try to keep cards with like a lot of spell casts that you can play early, like Trinket Trap, or play a few Autopuses on turn 1 and turn 2, so that you can prank immediately when your Peddler's on board.